Good afternoon, folks. I hope you're hungry for some juicy stories. Enjoy. First up, some backstory. During my gap year between studies, I decided to work for Company N. Company N was run by a husband, Dave, and wife, Karen, with their son, and basically treated their staff like a small family. All was well for about 2 months, until I realized I had to ask for a day off since I wanted to attend the last Slayer concert the band would give in my country. There was about a month to go, so I sent an email asking for the day off and explaining why. This is where everything started to go downhill. I got a reply from the Karen, and her reply was weird. She stated that's not how asking for a day off works. I was confused, to say the least. Not sure what to do. I thought she wanted a more formal way of asking, so I wrote a formal email asking for the day off. She shot an email back. I really had to think it through what I was doing, which made even less sense to me. But I was hopeful since I never really got a specific no. The next workday rolls around. I arrived, lock up my bike, and headed inside ready for work. I immediately started looking for Dave to ask for answers. Before I could even open my mouth, he asked me, "Do you still want to go to that concert?" I didn't expect him to ask this, so quickly answered, "Yes." The only thing he said back was, "Okay, take off your vest and you can go home." I was stunned, and while the words started to sink in, I looked at my colleagues, which were just preparing for opening. When it finally sank and anger flowed in. I am not a confrontal person, so I simply took off my vest and gave it to Dave. Without a word, I left and started biking home. When I got back home, I told my mother what happened. We started sending emails for extra information and got very Karen-like emails back. After a couple emails which went basically nowhere, I looked up the laws for immediate dismissal. After reading up about it, I learned that, in my country, somebody can only be immediately fired when caught stealing, frauding, the person isn't able to do the work, or refusal to do the work. I did neither of these. A day or two later, I met with my attorney and began the steps to sue Company N. I told my lawyer what happened in detail, and he was very confident I was in my right and she was not. So after trading even more emails between the three of us, we went to small claims. I came prepared in a suit with my attorney in tow. And Karen showed up. Alone. I guess she assumed she won because she thought she was in her right. The trial began and I was as professional and objective as I could be. Karen did the same. Well, for about half of the trial. When she realized evidence was piling up against her, she resorted to calling me a spoiled brat, among other things I don't know the English translation for. I'm safe to say that was the point. The judge ruled in my favor. As per usual, I had to wait a month before I got the verdict black on white in the mail, but I won. It may have taken about 6 months from the moment I was told to go home to the point those 6 months of pay were transferred to my bank account. But it was 100% worth it. In the end, I went to the concert. It was the most awesome and most profitable concert I have ever been to in my life. I was always the kid people picked on at school. The girls would spread rumors about me and the boys would harass me non-stop. See, I'd always known that I wanted to be a nanny. I loved babysitting and looking after kids, so it seemed like a natural career choice for me. I made the mistake of telling this to a girl who I thought was my friend, and she proceeded to tell everyone at school. As this was perceived as feminine, I instantly became the target for bullies. There was one boy who loved to terrorize me. I'll call him Jack for the sake of this story. Jack was awful. He would follow me home whilst throwing things at me, vandalize my schoolwork, call me disgusting names, steal my stuff, cut my hair in class, etc. I was terrified of him. It got to the point where I couldn't sleep from the fear of having to deal with him at school the next day. I blame him and his friends for the anxiety I had, and still somewhat have to this day. I reached breaking point not long after Christmas when I was 15. My family never had a lot of money, but we got by. My mom had saved for ages in order to buy me my first phone. No, it wasn't the newest model, but I didn't care. I was so grateful to have my first phone, and a little guilty that my mom had gone without her new Christmas outfit and had put off fixing her own phone to buy it for me. Once the schools went back after Christmas break, Jack found out about my phone. He took it from me and proceeded to read through my messages, making fun of me for the lack of contacts and telling my mom I loved her, then threw it to the floor and stomped on it in front of his friends. I was furious, upset and devastated. This cat had destroyed something that my mom had worked so hard to buy for me. I started planning my revenge. I knew through the grapevine that Jack's mom was a stay-at-home mom. His dad had a well-paid job and his mother was quite happy to stay at home with the kids, 4-year-old twin girls. I also knew, however, that she didn't get to go out much as Jack would flat out refuse to babysit and she was pretty picky when it came to who was allowed to look after her kids. I used to babysit her friend's little boy and was pretty good at it, if I do say so myself. However, for my plan to work, I had to babysit Jack's siblings. I made a few comments here and there to the little boy's mom about wanting to get a few more babysitting jobs so I could save up some money for my mom's upcoming birthday. As luck would have it, the lady recommended me to Jack's mom, since it had been so long since she'd been able to go out with the girls. For the next few weeks I'd go to Jack's house, with the other little boy I was babysitting, and look after his little sisters. Despite Jack's awful attitude, his family were all pretty nice. His little sisters were an absolute joy to look after. Jack wasn't usually in the house, but when he was I could see that it killed him to have to be civil to me. His mom would have flipped out if he'd been horrible to me in front of her or his little sisters. They'd have quickly ratted him out. Once I decided enough time had passed, I put my plan into action. See, Jack was one of those creepy kids that liked to brag about his adult magazine stash in his bedroom. This made him cool to his friends, never understood why tbh. Anyways, every time I'd babysit and put the little ones to bed, I'd sneak into his bedroom and search around. I know this is a massive invasion of privacy, but I was a stupid 15-year-old kid and I couldn't take his bullying anymore. I eventually found his stash and made a mental note that they were in a bag in his closet. I'd been observant those few weeks, so I knew that Jack's mom and dad had an unopened bottle of vodka in the fridge. They didn't drink a lot and it was only for when they were going to parties. One night, once the little ones were asleep and Jack was out with his friends, I went to the fridge, opened the bottle of alcohol and tipped about a quarter of it down the sink. His parents could afford to buy a new one, by the way. If they couldn't, I'd never have done it, and snuck up to Jack's bedroom and put the bottle in the same bag as his stash. His parents found out about it not too long later, and, after Jack accused me of taking it, they showed up at my door. They weren't angry because they still didn't know who had taken it, so they asked me some questions. I denied everything but was polite and even offered to help them look for it in case it had been misplaced. They thanked me but told me that it was fine, they'd find it. And oh boy did they find it. I was called over the next day to take the little ones to the park for an hour or so, in order for them to have a talk with Jack. They didn't like arguing in front of the twins, it had frightened them. When I got back, Jack was in his bedroom. If the noises were anything to go by, he was crying. It turns out that he'd ratted himself out. His parents found the bottle of alcohol in his room along with his adult magazines. His mother hated anything like that as she found it to be degrading to women. She humiliated him by gossiping to the neighbors about his unhealthy obsession with sex. He denied everything and accused me of planting the alcohol there. When asked why I do that, he ratted himself out by saying that it was payback for him breaking my phone. His parents flipped out. They'd had no idea their son was such a bully. They took away his phone, grounded him and made him sell his games console to pay to get my phone fixed. I had been saving up the money myself for a few weeks. His face when they made him hand me the money will stay with me forever. His parents questioned me about the bullying, eventually informing my mom as well. I'd hidden it from her and told her I dropped my phone. He got into a lot of crap at school after a few other kids came forward about the bullying they'd endured at the hands of Jack and his friends. A few of them, including Jack, got suspended. Jack's parents even made him go to the door to apologize to the people he tormented. I was reluctant to take the money at first as it was way over the amount it would cost to get my phone fixed, so his parents compromised and told me to take enough to at least cover the repair cost. Needless to say, with the phone repair covered, I managed to get my mom an awesome birthday gift. Not sure if revenge or karma, but it fits revenge, I hope. Back in the early 2000s, I worked for a tech company who offered tech support, on-site support and training to organizations who either didn't want specialized IT staff, or could benefit from outsourcing. The company consisted of the 3 directors, a sales department, finance/HR department, and tech department. Tech was further split, with a senior manager, 4 team managers, and each team having 2 section managers. For call center support, where I worked, we had 2 team leaders, 2 senior engineers, 2 normal engineers and 2 juniors. I was a standard engineer, earning $22K for a job that was worth at least $5K more outside of the low price area we all lived in. 2006, and I'm still stuck in this job, on the same pay. Conditions are worse than before, with no overtime, no flexi time, no financial compensation for industry qualifications, shortened breaks and no pay rise since I started. To make matters worse, they sold part of the land that the office was on to a developer, and on-site car parking was now for management only. We had to either pay to use the nearby council car park, or risk parking on the street. Morale was low, but despite bad pay it was still good for the area we lived in. One Friday in July, I think it was the 21st, one of the senior engineers finds a document that he shares around the private chat app. It's a restructuring plan that the board voted in last week. Apparently, this had to be made available for the company for 3 months before any changes to terms and conditions could be made, so the board gave it a generic file name and tried to bury it in the large staff shared area of the network. One of the directors was selling his shares and moving on, having been headhunted by a large recruitment firm in a nearby city. The 2 remaining directors had managed to buy most of her shares with a small quantity going outside the company. This was the company response. Most of the document was a typical downsize/restructure package with a twist. A few team mergers, staff reductions and pay cuts spun as if to say that they needed to maximize their profits to put the lost money back into the company. In October, a new contract would be released for all to sign, and was generic. In November, the restructure would be announced, and by January 1st, the new structure would be in place. The directors noted that the new contract needed to include clauses for non-competition and for soliciting customers, as these didn't exist except for the sales staff. It also mapped current positions to their new ones, and what the new salary would be. I would be down by £5,000 a year, but the twist was that anyone with the word manager in their title would have their pay increased drastically. The team manager's pay jumped from 52k to 65k, for example. By the end of the day, everyone under the rank of team leader had seen this document and was not happy. Over the weekend, I got a text message from one of the senior engineers inviting me to a barbecue at his house. When I got there, most of the tech staff was there, and during the afternoon we formulated a battle plan. Our revenge. Monday 24th July, 8 a.m. 26 people in the tech team arrived for work as normal, each with a letter for the senior manager giving their 1-month notice, and all quoting the clause in their contract that states that members of the technical team with access to confidential company information must be off-site and on gardening leave the same day as they hand in their notice. No exceptions will be given. Gardening leave is a term used to say that we still work for the company, have handed in our notice to quit, but can't remain on site or using company resources, so must wait out the remainder of the notice at home. We can't start a new job within that period. The net effect was that at 9:30 a.m., the director realized that his entire tech staff had quit and marched to the office floor and started harassing one of the seniors. The senior simply stood, took off his ID badge and swipe card, handed it to the director and told him, "I've already quit. This is me now sticking to my contract." On cue, most of the staff followed, with one member staying until lunchtime. From what I've been told, directors, senior managers, anyone they could get hold of were on the phones attempting to fix issues. The unsolved open queue went from around 35 to nearly 100 by lunchtime, and naturally the blame was left firmly at the door of those who quit. We were even bad-mouthed to customers. The day after our notice period expired, the senior engineer welcomed 25 new staff to his new company, and had already taken 10 large contracts from the place we used to work for. We all had better pay, not much, but it was better than losing pay, and much better conditions, with an actual carrier track rather than the whim of the managers. The old company tried to keep afloat for a year, but were losing money on every contract and couldn't afford to employ skilled or experienced people. They closed down in June of 2007, with the owners having to sell personal assets to pay debts, and the 2 remaining directors declaring personal bankruptcy too. I left the new company in 2010 as the market had changed and more companies were hiring staff than outsourcing, so contracts were harder to find, and I also had some minor medical issues that meant I needed to be near home. New company is still going strong though, having lent more towards web design and development than anything else these days. What did you think? What would you have done differently? Share your opinions in the comments. And if you enjoyed the stories, slap that like and subscribe button for more of them, and don't forget to support the original writers with an upvote. Links are in the description. Peace out, and catch you tomorrow.